At AQA, we work with the UK's largest teacher network to shape the future of assessment. With teachers for students, we ask questions today that matter tomorrow.
The 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles.
Welcome to Teachers Talk Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good morning. This is Points of View on TTR, and this morning we have Michael, Liz, Joe, and myself, Ray. And today we're going to be talking about a few different stories that have hit the news recently that have inspired some feelings among us. And the first story we're going to talk about has come up recently, and this has kind of been everywhere that I've seen. A lot of people are commenting on this. A lot of people have been talking about it at my work. And it's on the TES website I'm looking at now. It's Phillipson, our wonderful education secretary. Heads need training to avoid talking down to parents. And we were just discussing this before we started. It's interesting that this headline says heads need training, because we've seen this reported in various outlets as teachers need training on how to speak to parents and not talk down to them. So we've got the education secretary says school leaders, key there, should not drift into judgment when engaging with parents, and that school leaders should have more training on how to communicate with the parents effectively. So this has riled some people. This has riled a lot of people, myself included. Liz, do you want to, you look like you have some things to say. What's your initial response?
I have very many things to say about it. Obviously you've just mentioned about the fact that the way that it was initially reported was the way teachers talk. And we know these days that clickbait headlines, especially the way that they appear on social media and things like that, you know, people don't read the articles. People just literally comment on the basis of that headline. So that's definitely been done deliberately to the normal kind of teacher rage bait, isn't it? To get the parents going, oh yeah, that no disrespect, this is why home education's on the rise, blah blah blah. School, it's the usual teacher bashing that it's enabling. And I think on the whole we're very patient and respectful in the way, I mean, I speak for myself, I'm very, very careful about the way that I speak to parents, and I know that my colleagues are. You know, I've worked with several teachers over the years, and we check with each other, like, can you read this email, can you just check I've got this tone right, and make sure, double checking. I think it's really misplaced, but school leaders, having never been a school leader, I can't comment on that. I've not really kind of witnessed that communication. Maybe it's the case, but I find it very difficult to believe. I think dealing with parents has become almost as commonplace as dealing with students. And I think that we have become very good at it and managing it. The other way round, maybe could do with a little bit of a polishing, I would say.
Yeah. And I feel like that is kind of the only, I've been thinking really hard about, you know, all the times my parental communication has gone wrong. And every single time, and I need to preface this with, I'm actually very good at admitting when I've messed up. I have no problem putting my hands up and saying I've done this. In fact, I probably accept blame for things that I don't even need to accept blame for, because it's just easier, or I'm trying to cover someone else. Like I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. But every single time parental communication has gone pear-shaped, it's not my fault. It is not my fault. It has not been my fault. And the only possible interpretation, or you could say like, oh, well, maybe that teacher needs a bit more. It's because I'm rubber, to use the old kind of kid analogy that they use. I will send back what I'm getting. And so if I will always start out very, very, very politely and very professionally and get people to check something if I'm not sure. And then if a parent comes back with rudeness or aggression or anything that is less than professional, then my tone does slightly change. So perhaps it's the frustration and the kind of reciprocal unprofessionalism, I guess, that maybe people could be referring to. But I'm with you, Liz. I don't see it. I don't get it.
I just think even when conversations go a bit sour, like I've had phone conversations where the tone changes very, very quickly. You're met with defensiveness, and it can become quite an unpleasant conversation. And rather than continue a conversation in that manner, because I can feel I'm thinking this isn't going to go anywhere, I will then remove myself from the conversation rather than continue it and escalate, and me not be able to, because sometimes you feel like you can't defend yourself as well. Sometimes accusations are leveled at you and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know what to say in this situation. And so it is easier to remove yourself. But even, then it's not talking down. It's just a case of I can see this conversation isn't going to go anywhere. I'm actually going to end this conversation now. Maybe that's perceived as patronizing. I don't know.
But it can be, because every professional environment has a similar policy. And my school actually has their cards next to phones that have a script when dealing with challenging phone calls. And there's certain things you're supposed to say to try and avoid that last resort. And if that's not working, you are supposed to say, this conversation we're not getting anywhere here. I'm going to put the phone down now. And you do. And that's what we have been instructed to do as a last resort, obviously not as anything before that. But you don't get to call up the bank and scream at them. They'll hang up on you,
And
that's just
in education, I feel like that so many times I've had said to me, that's what you signed up for. No, I didn't. I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up to be disrespected. I signed up to teach. That's what I signed up for. Yes, I might be working with teenagers. I might be working with, parents and things like that who care very much about their children. I am a parent. I care very much about my child, but that's not to the extent where I'm going to be unpleasant to somebody else, and teachers are always, 99% of the time, obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but are looking out for a child's best interest. Even when something bad has happened, you're reporting it to try and be open about it and to try and resolve a situation. It's not just tale telling. It's not going, oh, this happened. It's, this happened. What can we do to move forward positively? Like, where do we go from here? It's all part of the vilification, I think, of us as a profession, which is just quite popular as a pastime. I feel like.
Yeah. Michael or Joe, do you have any experience in this arena?
So, I presume obviously we're talking about Bridget's comments on the heads leadership talking down with parents. I read the article because the title is very clickbaity, isn't it? It's almost designed to grab our attention, and as it always is. So I wanted to read it all in the context and read a little bit more. A couple of things that come to mind. You can read it as mild gaslighting to leaders, in particular in education, that they really don't know how to do their jobs. They really have no people skills. What they're saying is the leaders who are employed to run schools, to run staff, to liaise with parents, to be the figurehead of the community, they don't have the people skills to actually address issues, which I think is wildly unfair. And it's not true of the heads that I've worked under, certainly not true of my current head. It's absolutely amazing when talking to parents in very difficult situations. So I see it as mild gaslighting from that perspective. But I also see that the comments toe the line between being the politician to cater towards her constituency and the people that voted for her, whilst also not trying not to upset professionals and leaders, because it's done with the caveat of, yes, for the people I've spoken to, they really feel like they need that extra help. However, that's not to take away from the amazing work that they do, but we're not going to listen to that last bit at the end.
So this show is brought to you by Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So you can level up your professional development today and visit hachetteLearning.com to explore the full range of titles. We also have the Chalk and Talk podcast. So if you're looking for another great education podcast, you should check that one out. Obviously, we love TTR, but there are other things out there as well. So Chalk and Talk with Anna Stokey is great for all sorts of evidence-based mass education for students of all ages. She talks about everything from effective teaching methods and how-to guides for teaching math facts to tips for evaluating research shows claims, which is great and useful. I'm still trying to teach my year 11s what that actually means if they're writing a persuasive argument in English, so it's not just limited to maths. She brings top-notch guests, educators, researchers, and policymakers, and discusses issues that directly impact teachers and students. So Chalk and Talk is for anyone interested in education, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, we have AQA. AQA knows teachers are the real experts in the classroom. How refreshing. That's why they work closely with teachers like you, combining your insight with their assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training, and guidance that genuinely make a difference. They're the UK's most chosen assessment organization, so chances are you already know their work. And as we head into the new school year in October, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. If you want to find out more about how they're working with teachers just like you, head to their website or search AQA, We Work with Experts. Michael, you're back.
I am, yeah. I just will say.
Oh no.
Timing.
This is genuinely tragic.
Get him off.
Right. Oh boy. Michael's gone. I'm covered in cat fur. What is this Sunday? Joe, do you have a thought on that article and Phillipson's interesting claims?
I actually read it in the context of what I think she was talking about, the general topic of parental engagement. The whole point of what she was talking about was to do with engaging parents. I read it and listened to her comments as though she kind of off-pieced a little bit and lost what she was trying to say. In terms of comments around people needing help, not talking down to leaders, and leaders not talking down to parents. Plenty of people talking down to leaders a lot of the time. But I sort of looked at it in the context of parental engagement, and I was reading something else earlier on today just regarding where things changed with parents and schools, and the idea that during the pandemic, people were sort of looking over their kids' shoulders more and seeing what they were engaging with school. And that gave them the opportunity to have more of an opinion and more to feel as though they have the right to challenge. And that challenge has come at us more and more and more over the last several years. In terms of the idea of whether we're not supposed to have an opinion or not making parents feel judged, I thought that was an interesting comment, because sometimes it's hard to give advice to parents about the things that might be going wrong that aren't fixable by school, without the help and the support and the work of parents, without it seeming like you're judging. I take, for example, talking to parents about their kids' use of social media. And the minute I point out that you have to be over the age of 13 to have Snapchat or whatever, and I'm talking to a year 7 parent, it's hard to have that conversation without it sounding like you're making a judgment that you've made a terrible decision allowing this. And that isn't what I mean. It's trying to give parents that tool to say, here's something you can say to your child about why you're taking it.
I think sometimes, and I say this as somebody who has a little bit of kind of rejection sensitivity, and like I am super like paranoid about people making judgments about me, and sometimes someone's not making a judgment and someone's not talking down to you, but because you're very sensitive about it, you take it that way. And perhaps it's a defensiveness within parents, is you haven't intended, as a teacher, as a leader, when you say something, you haven't intended for it to be judgmental or patronizing or anything. It has literally been meant to be supportive, helpful, guidance, but it's taken wrong. But there's not a lot that you can do about that element of it. I mean, when I've had counselling and things like that in the past, they've said to me, only you are in control of how you feel. Like, you can't control what others do and say, only you can control how you feel about things. And so therefore, actually, is it going to make any difference if I think we do it well. I think we're people. Our entire job is dealing with people. Like, we are very emotionally intelligent just by the very nature of what we do. And so I think we are good at obviously, again, there's exceptions to every rule. Of course, people will get it wrong occasionally. Of course, I've definitely pitched it wrong in the past, not intending to, having the best of intentions, but I've, for whatever reason, I've not got it right. But you can't, if someone's already on the defensive, no matter what you say, you're potentially going to upset somebody.
I think that's a big thing. And I understand. I mean, I'm not a parent myself, but I understand why they would be so defensive about something like this. Is excuse me, this is their child. This is the most important thing that they have, the most important thing that they do. And from their perspective, someone on the outside is coming in and telling them how to do that job, or telling them about their child. Like, I fully understand the defensiveness, but I feel like there needs to be acknowledgement that that's still a them problem. Like, that's still, I understand where you're coming from, but it is still a you problem.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes people are going to have opinions from the outside, and that feedback, those opinions, those views, those truths are things you need to hear. And that, that might sting, that might be difficult, but suck it up, buttercup. So I get where they're coming from, a lot of them, but that doesn't change any of the facts. It does make me, like you, more careful about the way, I'm going to throw my cat out a window, sorry. Does make me more careful about the way that I interact with a lot of parents, but it's not going to change the fact that they still need to be willing to hear what is being said. And I can phrase it any way on earth, I can have any tone possible, but they need to be willing to actually engage in a productive way. And I feel like that's where 99% of the stumbling blocks happen. It's not us.
Yeah, it's that willing engagement, isn't it? Which kind of circles back to what Joe said at the beginning of what Phillipson's comments were in the context of, is parental engagement. And if parents aren't willing to engage and aren't willing to be open to have these conversations, and again, it kind of, Ray, you said earlier about different professions and what people expect in different professions. Well, when I go and see a doctor, or when any of us go and see a doctor, there might be a certain amount of talking down that happens in that process, because I'm not as clever as they are. I don't have the qualifications that they have. And they are going to talk down to me, and I'm not going to feel patronized. I might speak up for myself occasionally and say, oh, it's all right, don't worry, like, I get what you're saying, or something like that. But ultimately, they are going to dumb it down in a way that I understand. I'm not going to expect the health secretary to stand up and say, oh, doctors, need to not talk down to patients. So I'm going to expect, and do you know what? Doctors are going to tell you things that they don't want to hear. They are going to say, do you know what? You need to lose weight. Because that's part of the reason that you're having the health problems that you're having. You do need to change your diet. You do need to do that. They're going to give you bad news. But I don't see anyone turning around and saying, obviously, they have to have a bedside manner. They have to be careful in how they do it. They're not like brutal. But I feel that we are careful in what we say. I don't feel that we are. I can only speak for myself and like other colleagues that I've worked with, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone handle something so spectacularly badly and thought, we'll have a conversation about that. Perhaps that's we'll open it with like trainees and things like that, because obviously they're new and learning how to have these communications. I've got an ECT at the moment. She and I are talking about how to word emails all the time. just to make sure that we are having those conversations. Say what you need to say without it coming across accusatory or I get why people are spiky, but is it because we're teachers? Would we say this to other people? Not sure that we would.
No, we wouldn't. And it is because we're teachers.
Take your point about GPs. I'm willing to bet that my doctor's surgery doesn't have a patient's WhatsApp group that goes quite as wild as maybe one about a particular school or a particular bunch of schools in an area or anything. The doctor's WhatsApp group is probably not that same type of way that we are approached as a profession.
And they do annoy people.
I can only speak for myself, but I'm certainly not in my GP surgeries group.
No, but I do see, because I'm in some local Facebook groups, mostly for the entertainment value. And every so often, I love them. I love a local Facebook group. Every so often, somebody will post, like every couple weeks at least, something about one of the local GP surgeries, about this receptionist, or I can't get through, or this person said this and that, and they're so rude. And like, they do complain, but the thing is, the government's not, what you said, Liz, the government's not standing up and saying GPs or, GP receptionists need more training on how to deal with the public. No one reacts. Like, humans complain about each other. Like, next, the government isn't stepping in and saying anything about it because they're respected medical staff, or at least theoretically respected medical staff, whereas we just are constantly kicked around and everyone feels like they have to tread some middle ground. It's what Michael was saying before he disappeared for the fifth time. The position teachers are in, it's like we're constantly villainized, and then you have all these politicians and all these people with platforms trying to, in a weird way, maintain that villainization possibility, while also not, just treading this impossible middle ground where we're never actually getting the respect that other careers do, and it's infuriating.
We're never considered the experts. We're not allowed to be. We're not, and it's unbelievable considering the experiences that we have, and that some, especially those of us who've done this for a long time. We've seen a lot, we've done a lot. There aren't very many of us left who've been in the profession for a long time. But we're not allowed to be. I mean, Michael Gove kind of kicked that off, though, didn't he? We've had enough of experts. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not allowed to be. I think we're very easy societal scapegoats. I think it becomes very, very easy to make teachers kind of the reason for all the problems in society. I'm so sick of seeing clickbait headlines all the time. Like the fines, for example. Teachers fine parents for term time holidays. Teachers don't. I've got nothing to do with it. Don't blame me. I don't make any decisions whatsoever. So don't. And then it's like, oh, those teachers. Well, as soon as they want to strike, they're expecting us to pick up. Got nothing to do with me. It's got absolutely nothing to do with me. Don't be blaming me. But it's easy. We're easy targets because we're quite visible, aren't we? And at the same time, we're being asked to pick up all of society's problems as well. If your child can't use a knife and fork, we'll get the teachers to sort it out. Your children can't brush their teeth, don't worry, the teachers will sort it out. Your child's not eating breakfast, no worries, the teachers will sort it out. All of these things are coming down to us, but then we're also blamed for them as well. Like we can't do it all. We can't both be responsible for it and to blame for it. That's very unfair.
Well, that's it in a nutshell, isn't it? Just doesn't make any logical sense, but here we are. Well, I think we've agreed that that's all a bunch of foolishness. Does anyone have any other comments? So sad Michael's gone.
I really wish that that they'd focus on the things that need focusing on in education. It feels like every now and again we have this kind of absolute obsession with one particular thing that's not a big issue in education at all, and it seems to be deflecting from what we really need to be talking about. I don't know how to solve it. There aren't any solutions out there.
That does feel like what a lot of it is. Like we can't deal with any of these actual problems, or we're not prepared to deal with any of these actual problems. So let's deflect onto this other thing that sounds like an easy fix, but actually when you think about it, sounds so insanely, it's just absurd. It just sounds like a bunch of deflection to me. Shall we move on?
At AQA, we work with the UK's largest teacher network to shape the future of assessment. With teachers for students, we ask questions today that matter tomorrow.
The 7,500 primary schools are already using Capel Primary to boost confidence in teaching foundation subjects. Our expert-created curriculum planning, lessons and CPD are here to support and upskill you, whether you're a subject lead or classroom teacher. If you've got knowledge gaps in art, music, computing or beyond, we've got you covered. Head to capelprimary.com and empower your teaching today.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles.
I think we're all on the same. Okay. So the next topic that has got some interesting responses. We have an article on the BBC that says children should be in school, not protesting. I have some personal experience with some decisions about this that I will share shortly. Conservative Party leader has said it was wrong for primary school children to be used as a political football. And this has come after about 100 or so protested for universal free school meals outside of a Labour Party conference. About 100 children from schools in the city also handed a petition to the Prime Minister and handed out leaflets to delegates as they arrived at the conference venue in Liverpool. The NEU organised the activity involving children from 10 local primary schools and said the leafleting event did not conflict with the rules around political impartiality in schools. Well, I see that. They're not attaching themselves to a particular party. It just, that was the political event happening around, so that makes sense. I don't think it's politically, I don't think that's breaking the political impartiality rule, but it is political and it is a protest that they're not in school, and some people do not agree with this. What are our thoughts?
Joe, do you want to go first? If Joe's not frozen. Major technical issues this morning.
I think she might be. Today is just, I feel like we should just restart today and get an extra day on the weekend. Right. I'll share my story.
Go.
So I'm gonna, I don't even remember what exactly this was about. I don't remember the year. I don't remember the protest. There was a couple years like between like 2016 and 2020 when there was a lot of protesting happening in London where I worked at the time. And one such thing was happening in central London on a school day. And obviously I would have been there if I don't even remember what it was for, but I cared, I cared a lot about a lot of them. But I had to go to work. And I spoke to one of the students, one of the students, I think they were in year 10 or 11 at the time. I think it was year 11. Came up to me and was like, hypothetically, if I was not in school tomorrow and it was discovered that I was protesting in central London, would that be authorized? And I was ahead of year, and the way that the system worked at the time, heads of year at that school could authorize we could like put it straight on the system. We could authorize absences or mark them as unauthorized. So I was like, why don't we just wait and see, right? Why don't we just wait and see? And then I got an email like the next day. I can't remember if it was in the morning or if it was in the evening after it had happened. But basically, they'd gone with I think it might have all just been students from different schools. I don't know. Anyway, they went to this protest in central London. That's why they weren't in. And I authorized it. I just authorized it. I think I put something in the comments like, changing the world And I was expecting the attendance officer or somebody to like come and ask me about this. I was expecting to have to argue my case, and just no one said anything. Like no one did. So it's just like, okay, that's your authorized protest day. I feel like everybody should have one. Like if there's something you believe in and you're willing to catch up on all the work that you missed at school, and you're going to travel somewhere and you're going to try and use your voice to make a difference for whatever that is, whatever side of the spectrum, whatever the reason is, I feel like that kind of civil engagement should be encouraged, especially in young people. And we have all these people saying we should lower the voting age and we should, get kids more politically active, and then we want to prevent them from doing things that actually matter. We just want them to tick a box once every couple of years at a polling station. So yeah, I was like, go for it. Tick that off.
Yeah.
No one.
I just feel like the attendance has become a massive political football, hasn't it? And I think that's potentially why also the concept is so controversial now, is because we're desperately trying to keep kids in school and keep attendance above a certain amount, and so this wouldn't be deemed authorized, where perhaps obviously you saw that it was reasonable. And actually I do agree, you've actually kind of changed my mind on it, because I was a little bit like, the problem is there are a few students who would just see it as an opportunity, not necessarily because they passionately feel anything for it, but it's like, oh good, I don't have to be in school, let's go do, because there was was it the protest with Greta Thunberg?
I don't think so. I think it was something a little bit smaller. Oh, which one are you talking about? Like,
yeah, there was the environmental one, wasn't there? That kind of was led by Greta Thunberg, and I was in my last job, and it's around the same time that you're talking about, and I remember. It was environmental, and I remember the cleanup after the protest. Like London was an absolute mess. There was rubbish everywhere, and people were like, oh, so these young people supposedly care about the environment, but they've just left their rubbish all in the streets and everything. And it kind of detracted a little bit from the message. And I remember having messages in briefing at the time and saying lots of students are saying that they're going to go off and join this protest, and we shouldn't be encouraging it. But actually I think if you're right, Ray, if we should allow them to use their voices. Today with social media and things like that, they're very passive in the way that they ingest a lot of their information, and how we need to encourage them to use their voices actually. They're allowed one day.
I feel like there needs to be a limit on it. Otherwise it just becomes like anything else, right? But I'm fully in favor of authorizing one day, and maybe they have to provide some evidence, like you have to provide evidence for any authorized absence, really. But I just feel like it would be massively hypocritical for us to talk about all these things in PSHE and citizenship and form time and all this stuff, and encourage them to take part in the community and being a decent citizen, and then not allowing them to do anything outside of school, like during school hours. Like it all has to be outside. Like that doesn't logically make any sort of sense to me. So I feel like there would have to be limitations on it, and regulated, I guess, so to speak, to the same way as anything else. But yeah, I just didn't want to be a hypocrite. I was like, well, of course you could, like, go.
Yeah, go use your voice.
Yeah.
And what they are, as you said, if we're lowering the voting age, they are the adults of the future. We do need to try and encourage them to use their voices in this way.
Yeah.
I mean, you said about limitations. Obviously, something like this with kind of universal free school meals or whatever is something that would directly affect children. So it was something we would encourage. Obviously with like duties under prevent and things like that, if there was anything that was kind of linked to some form of extremism or something like that, we would.
Well, that's the flip side. So if we're regulating things and checking, then obviously if there's evidence that they're supporting particular groups that have been prescribed, then obviously we'd have to report that. If there's evidence that they're, supporting extremist views, we'd have to report that. So with that would come a whole host of other other issues.
It would almost stem a whole new avenue of admin for us to kind of consider as like tutors pastorally potentially to be concerned about. It's an interesting one. That article though, I don't know, because I read it about 6 times because there was a sentence in it which I thought I'd misread, so I had to go back over it. And it said that one of the sentences was Badenoch said if people felt strongly enough about it, they could take their children. I thought it's. I don't know if anybody else read that or if I read that wrong, but I had to go over it again, and I was like, no, I'm sure it does say that. So she seems to be saying no, it shouldn't happen, but if they feel strongly enough, they should.
So maybe the issue, and this was my kind of query as well. Like, it's one thing for a 15 or 16-year-old kid, which was my case that I authorized, to decide that no, I feel really strongly about this. I'm going to go to this protest. I'm going to go to this march. I'm going to do whatever. It's another thing for a bunch of primary school kids, because if you're, under 12, how politically aware are you really, and where are you getting that information? Like, are you mature enough? Are you aware enough? Are you informed enough to be making an educated decision about A, what you think about these issues, B, the logistics of going to some sort of protest or some sort of event, and the fact that it was organized by groups of adults, there's something a little bit questionable. It's a very different scenario from a 15 or 16-year-old making an independent individual political choice. Than having, I can see where people would say you're using groups of children for your own kind of political ends, because like how old are these kids and how much do they know? It does seem potentially exploitative.
Put a sad faced child.
Yeah. yeah. Look at these poor kids.
Very Oliver Twist.
Yeah, no, I do get that.
Do you think? I mean, I sort of agree with that in the sense that the younger the students are. I mean, I think sort of sixth form students is absolutely sort of fine. But the younger you get, there is. I do feel nowadays that political activism is very much on trend. Right, it's like even if you don't know anything, it's like I want to now. Some people will look at that and say, "Oh yeah, it's young people wanting to be involved in stuff," but have they read anything about it? Do they actually know what they're doing? Have they spent time to actually understand the issues at play, or is it just I saw a TikTok video, I'm going to miss a day at school because I've seen a 30-second TikTok video and 5 of my mates are going? That's not to say that I don't think you can manage that. I don't think you can interview each child and say, let's see why or how you feel strongly about this as to whether we're going to do this as an unauthorized absence. I mean, that would be ridiculous. But I do, like I said, I think we live in an age where sort of, political activism is very much on trend. And I think there's nothing, I say that as a negative. It's not necessarily negative, but it's almost become like a little bit of a religion for some people. And I think that is where it becomes like, it's almost like going to church on a Sunday, which is fine, but you need to know about the issues that you're talking about. Like everybody wants to feel meaning and wants to be involved in a group and wants to feel part of something. And that's great, but if you don't know what you're talking about, which I think that's where it becomes maybe a bit of an issue. But in terms of the kids actually missing it if they feel strongly about something, I don't have a massive issue with that. I think the younger you get, though, it does get a bit more, like you say, if it's extremist, then that could be on the far right or the far left. I think if you have that and there's no sort of, like you say, prevent or safeguarding or anything else attached, then I think that could be an issue. That's my point of view.
Because I can just see, 16-year-old arrested for holding up a sign supporting a group they're not allowed to support, and then it turns out that they'd been authorized to go to the protests, and then the schools and the firing line. Like I can see the series of events happening.
We had that girl make a speech at the rally a few weeks ago. I think she was about 14, the one who wore the Union Jack dress. And she went down and made that speech, and obviously it was supported by the parents, etc. That's where it starts to get a little bit dicey for me. Not because, as I said, it could be any extremist sort of group or anything. You might be able to hear that. I don't know what that is. So hopefully I'll still be alive in the next 2 minutes. But yeah, so I think, like, for me, that's where you need to look at it, is whether there's sort of political brainwashing going on.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, because just the younger ones, you would think younger ones would be able to understand something like free school meals. Like, that's not a complicated topic. You could get an 8-year-old to understand what that is and but like the nuances of there's always more to it, and yeah, there just seems a little bit sketchy to me to be.
But would a primary age child understand the funding sort of?
No, that's what I mean. They wouldn't understand the implications.
But with free school meals, though, would a primary age child understand the funding pressures and decisions that a government has to make, different competing things that they have to fund, whatever they are, right? And you know, we can argue that they should just fund it anyway.
Some adults do.
No, they don't. So kids could understand the basic concept of it. That's not challenging, but the practicalities, the logistics, they have no concept of it, and they won't for a number of years. So, is it right to get them to?
But was that one organised by? Did primary heads and teachers take those children to that protest? Is that what happened, or was it parents who took them?
No, I think it was. Go on.
I read it as parents, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe that's where I got confused.
I didn't read it as parents. I read it that it was a school trip, and that it'd been perhaps couched into a lesson about a democratic process, and this is how we're looking at democracy, and that the leaflet,
which I appreciate.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate the democracy lesson.
I can see both points of view on it. But yeah,
is it possible to teach about democracy in other ways, though? Because I can see how something like that would be controversial, because if you think of all the accusations that are leveled at, and being leveled at us all the time about us brainwashing and things like that, could this be interpreted as?
Well, I know a teacher fairly recently who history teacher talking in lessons about the 1930s, and they made some comparisons to the present day, which, you know, is part of, I mean, I've done that many times in my history lessons. I still do, you know, when I talk about sort of I mean, I'm very careful to frame it as some people will argue, so I will always put on the beginning, some would say, some would argue, some might consider, right, before I say anything. But, you know, when it comes to the 1930s, if we look at appeasement, for example, you know, we sort of go for the parallels of some of the things that are happening, and you know, and countries getting away with certain things, and you know, because the international, you've got blah blah blah, you can go on and on, right? You could make different comparisons, or you could argue there is a comparison to make between what and history repeats and all that stuff. Anyway, this teacher got a parental complaint in, and you know, about sort of bias, or, you know, political bias. I don't know where that's up to, but you know, but that is a reality now, in terms of, you know, you have to be really careful what you say. In saying that, should we be really careful what we say? Right.
Well, can we think about that? Because that's a loaded question, and I need to remind everybody who our sponsors are. So hold that thought. So first, we've got Hachette Learning. The show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit that website that is on your screen. And if you're listening, it is www.hachetlearning.com. We also have AQA, who know teachers are the real experts in the classroom. I said it before, and it is so refreshing to hear that because everybody else seems to hate us. That is why AQA works closely with teachers like you, combining your insight with their assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training, and guidance that genuinely make a difference. They're the UK's most chosen assessment organization, so you probably already know their work. And as we head into the second half of this first half term, thankfully, my goodness, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. So you can visit their website or search AQA We Work With Experts for more information. Right. So should we be more careful? Also, sorry, if you're not paying attention and watching this, you will maybe not have noticed that Tom Rogers appeared on the screen and started talking. And if you were listening, you might have thought that Michael, who was here previously, had just had some sort of voice box surgery, but he hasn't. This is a different person. So we now there's 4 of us again.
I haven't got a hat to put on either. But no, yeah, no. I mean, my sort of thinking around that was, I listen, right. I think it's fair to say the profession is left leaning. I think that's just what it is, right? I think it is important, therefore, that an extra effort is made by people within the profession to reflect all points of view and to offer a platform for young people to express their thoughts, their opinions, their feelings, and for everybody to have a fair chance to do that. I also think that it's important that children are still listen and are influenced by adults. So when you've built up a really good relationship with a class, and you might drop in subtle sort of things about different things, I think you have to be really careful with that. But I also, on the flip side to that thing, we don't want to enter a space where it's like we literally can't say anything, because, you know, it's like we do still need to have some ability to have conversations about difficult issues. On Wednesday, actually, I'm going to talk about this with regards to the recent protests and different things that have been happening in the UK, in terms of, you know, debates about immigration, debates about race, debates about St. George's flags, debates about whatever, right? All those sort of hot potato topics, but ultimately it's a tricky one. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is that I think we as teachers should be careful not to project our own personal views and opinions, whatever they are, onto students.
It is so difficult, and Ray, you're an English teacher, as am I, and I think and Tom obviously is a history teacher as well. I think with the humanities-based subjects,
so hard.
It's
English and history are the worst.
Difficult, because obviously the topics that you're teaching are swayed politically. You know, if you're teaching an inspector calls, if you're teaching Animal Farm, if you're you have to have those debates about socialism, communism, capitalism. You know, they come into your classroom, you can't avoid them, and I find that particularly difficult to manage. And I also find difficult, particularly again with the protests that have happened recently, and kind of the rise of some of the kind of narrative that is spilling into regular conversation now. There's a real balance between me fulfilling my professional duties, but also protecting people who are in my classroom who may be hearing views that are unacceptable, actually. Mm-hmm. But because I'm supposed to be politically neutral, like, where do I stand on that?
But the thing is, but Liz, your version of unacceptable might be a different version to somebody else.
But if it's racist,
depends what it is they said. I don't know what they said, but yeah, one person's unacceptable is another person's spicy.
Yeah,
spicy.
But is it? But if it's racist, if people are making comments, yeah,
say again.
Right. If it's racist, if, you know, people are saying,
well, that's what I said. I don't know the context of what was said, but again, one person's version of what something is going to be very different to what someone else's version of what something is. I don't know. I'll give you an example, right? I'll give you an example, and you tell me, because I don't necessarily know. I had a debate about this once actually with someone on Twitter, but okay, let's take teaching the Holocaust, right? You could either A, tell them the facts about the Holocaust, but offer nothing more than that. B, tell them that, start to get into the moral side of it and talk about, why it was wrong. Give sort of the argument as if it's needed, but explain why it's morally wrong what happened, right? That might be option 2. Option 3, teach it, which I think, and this is where we get into this area of rule. Let's take that one as an example, but teach it as almost like a lesson on morality, right? I don't know
in like a sort of, so with the third option, would it be like a, what would you have done?
Okay, so my sort of teacher had to present the facts. As a history teacher, present the facts, let people form opinions based on the fact. That's fundamentally what I think the pinnacle is. But on certain particular issues, it does get a little bit more difficult to do that, I think. And I'm choosing the Holocaust as one, but there could be other. Of course, there will be others. It can be a little bit more challenging to do that. I'm not saying I don't do that, because I think I do, but so I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I was just interested in the third option where it's talking about like teaching the morality element. Would that be in the sense of teaching the facts first and then saying, what would you have done in this situation, to start like a kind of ethical or moral debate? Or how does the third option look in a classroom?
Teaching something as wrong.
Oh, right. Okay. So actually kind of swaying it.
Teaching something as wrong.
Yeah. Okay. No, because I misunderstood what you were saying in that third one, because I was like teaching kind of in the morality sense.
I mean, it may be obvious. It may be obvious that the thing is wrong, but there's a difference between presenting the facts and then letting people make it, or teaching that it is wrong. Yeah. I think we have had a bit of an issue with teachers sometimes teaching things that as wrong, teaching them as wrong, rather than presenting it and letting students, even if you think it's blindingly obvious, and that's fine. If it's blindingly obvious, it's blindingly obvious. Killing 8 million people. Well, you're presenting the facts. What conclusion are you going to draw? I don't know. The idea of teaching something as wrong.
Well, I think we're talking about you have to adapt that based on the stage, right? Like, by the time they're in secondary, you can do that. You can present information, and obviously enough kids in the class will point out the glaringly obvious that you actually won't have to say anything yourself. And it's kind of similar with English. Like, we always have the get out of, well, Orwell says, or Priestley seems to be suggesting, or whatever, that we don't actually have to. I mean, I'm sure kids can.
Exactly.
I mean, I can fake it, right? But I'm sure they can detect where my enthusiasm lies, depending on which perspective I'm. Of course they can. But you always say, well, critics would say this, and Priestley would have said that, and they argue amongst themselves. We get them to do debates on these characters for an inspector calls, and who's like right, and they form their own opinions on it. I don't actually have to say anything about my personal thoughts. But if you're teaching like the fundamentals of racism or the Holocaust or whatever in primary school, I feel like, an 8-year-old kid, just so they have like a basic understanding of some history, you can't just present. I don't know. I don't teach primary school, but I just feel like that is a whole different ball game. And maybe you do have to be, because these kids are still forming their concept of what is right and what is wrong, and what other people means, and what racism is, and I just feel like I would be more concerned if I taught in a primary school about saying the wrong thing, because I feel like you have to be explicit with morality and ethics with younger children in a way that you don't have to be in secondary school, because someone else will say it for you anyway.
So true.
That would scare me a lot more.
Yeah. I mean,
I would be interested in how topics like this are covered in primary school. My son is 6, so I'm going to hear about it, I think, as the years progress, about how he learns things and how topics are taught, because it must have to be different.
Yeah. It must.
Handled really.
I'm trying to think. Sorry,
the whole education system was set up for moral teaching. I mean, that's you know, you think back to Victorian times, like the whole thing was around, you know, teaching the morals and ethics and sort of the values and all that sort of thing. But I just think in the political climate that we're now entering, one thing that teachers need to make sure they do is protect themselves.
Yeah.
Now, how you do that effectively, I'm not entirely sure. But I mean, the problem you've got is, right, if teachers are overly careful with what they do, they become lesser teachers than what they could be, right? And then you're taking away that flair. You're taking away the impromptu conversations that a teacher might have with students around things. Because the teacher's immediately going, I might make a mistake here. I might make a mistake and it could get me fired. Or it could get me in the papers. It could get me here and there. I mean, there was a story in the Manchester Evening News just last week, 2 weeks ago, where, you know, a teacher had said something. Can't remember, you'll have to look it up, but they'd said something and there was a huge, I mean, like loads of parents wrote in. It made the Manchester Evening News. When you look at what the teacher actually said, it was probably inadvisable, but it was not like, oh my God.
I know what you're talking about. It wasn't factually incorrect. Like it wasn't
that bad.
Wrong.
It was something, like I say, which would be inadvisable, and it wouldn't be something that I think I would say. But equally, I'm looking at it and I'm going, how easy is it for someone to make a comment, right? That's where I think probably a good option is, if you feel that you have strong political opinions about something, or you just generally have strong political views, I think it's a good practice before a particular lesson where something could come up, just to check yourself, just to go, right, you know what, like, I have my strong views here. I just need to be a little bit careful in the way that I go about this, but not too careful that we don't discuss it. It's like just a balance, isn't it? But ultimately, you got to protect yourself, because it's not worth it. It's not worth losing. It's not worth losing your job. It's not worth like being splashed around social media or have like TikToks made of you or whatever. It's you know, it's a shame, but that's the reality of what it is, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's the freedom of speech thing, you know, which obviously a lot of the, you know, you feel like you actually almost don't have any freedom of speech. And I don't mean in terms of like influencing politically, but having to watch so carefully what you say on topics that something might be misconstrued is really difficult, because things are taken out of context all the time.
I think the problem is, though, you're the authority in the room. You're the adult in the room. So that freedom of speech thing is absolutely true. But the only difference is here, you're the adult in the room and everyone else is a child. So therefore, you will have more influence. Anything you say is probably whatever, you know, even if it's a class where it's like, oh, they all hate me, your words are still going to have more influence than, you know, Johnny in the corner saying his big spiel about it. He could spend 5 minutes talking about something, and you as a teacher could respond, I agree. And you saying I agree would have more impact than anything else. That's, you know, because you're the adult, you're the authority, you're the ones they look to for, you know, the answers.
Oh, I wish that were fully true, because I'd be able to get them to write their name on stuff regularly. Right, I'm working on time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But, you know, fundamentally, even I mean, we jest, but like I said, they could hate your guts and they could really like misbehave all the time, but still equally they're gonna listen to what you're gonna want to say.
Well,
I think
maybe.
Idealistically.
Hopefully, I guess. I don't know. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a very interesting hour of technical problems, cat fur, and freedom of speech issues, I suppose.
Oh wait, someone has made a comment on Twitter. They said, "My observation is that the majority of teachers, it's Heather. My observation is that the majority of teachers are doing their best, and we need positive stories about what this looks like, so we can all learn from best practice." But then after that, she's put one of those like confused emojis on it, which makes me wonder if she's confused by what she said,
or what we said, or
it's that one. You know, this one.
Bridget Phillipson said. With the thing? Yeah.
No, it's the one with like the. It's the one like like sloping eyebrows. Don't know. So I don't know if she's saying that. Well, Heather, just message us. Tell us. There you go.
Yeah.
Fine.
Well, maybe we should do something a little bit happier next time, or a little bit less enraging. But where's the fun in that, really?
It's so difficult though, because everything that seems to come out about education feels very negative. So it's really hard.
Well, no, I think it's always been that. Come on, it's always been that way.
Oh, it has. 100%.
Grass is greener. It's always been that way. It's just now social media is so much bigger that people actually talk about it more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's really
that's true.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.